What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. I know you guys missed us. I'm one of the hosts of the podcast. My name's Kevin Valentin.
And I'm the other host of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabro. Kev, it's good, my guy.
Chilling, man. Simple Sunday, pool, food, hung out with some friends, got some sun, you know what I'm saying? And just an overall good weekend. What about you?
I had an interesting weekend. I almost got in a car
Yeah.
accident this past weekend. It
Yeah.
was pretty close. Had homeboy driven about 2 more feet, your boy would have been in some pretty bad shape. But dude, I broke out the evasive maneuvers. I was able to dodge that, and fortunately, the only thing that my car suffered was a blown out tire. Like the sidewall had blown out because of all the pressure when I hit the curb, going like 15, 20 miles an hour. And then after that was just some minor alignment work. So all things considered, you know, I'll take that any day of the week.
Hey, man, you damn Skippy. So,
Yeah.
thankful you're good. Thankful you're here. So let's just kind of run with it like we always do. It's a big reason why big reason why we didn't end up recording our last episode, guys. We just between Kyle
Well,
doing what happened there, and then my brother's graduation from college. We were kind of all over the place in general. So shout out to my baby brother, by the
yeah.
way.
And not only that, well, first of all, congratulations to Max for graduating from college. Obviously, big ups, bro. 100%. And I felt bad because I texted Kev, what was this, on Friday night, saying, dude, I almost got in a really bad car accident. I didn't want that to overshadow what Max had just did. But I knew you would have had something else to talk about when I texted that because I was like, it just happened.
Yeah,
So,
called Kyle immediately. Like my
but
brother was like, Call him. I want to know if he's okay."
oh yeah, I mean, I'm fine. Dodged a bullet as far as I see it. But I'm gonna be honest with
So,
you. I think another reason why we didn't record last week was, Kev, those playoff games, like for those game twos, maybe like a game three here and there, were blowouts.
well, that, and then they were also, for whatever reason, Kyle and I were just talking about this. We had a lot of one game evenings that were just stupid. They were blowouts, yes, but like
Yeah.
the game would start at 9 o'clock, 8:30, and we're like, what are we going to talk about?
And,
Like the
and
blowout?
and like Kevin and I were talking about this earlier too. We were talking about from game two to game three in the Knicks and Heat series. Game two took place on Tuesday last week. Game three didn't take place until Saturday. You're telling me you need 3 full days off? I can understand 1 day for travel. I can get that. But you gotta take Thursday and Friday off too, and then Saturday night game doesn't start till like 7:30. Like, no, no.
And Kyle made the point. They're in the same time zone. New York and Florida, East
It's a two,
Coast. It's a
it's
two
a
and a
two
half hour
hour
flight.
flight. It's not that far. You
So if,
know,
if it was like what Kyle had mentioned about the Memphis series that the Lakers
with the
just had, if it was LA to Memphis over and over and over, that's a different concept. That's two time zones.
yeah, I mean, granted, it's still not like a really long flight. It's not like you're going from like LA to New York, where you're definitely gonna get that 3 hour time change. But I don't think the Lakers and Memphis series had a literally 3 full days off, with one of
I
those
don't think
days
so
being
either, if I remember
travel. So
correctly.
I think they were giving Jimmy a little bit more extra time to recover from that ankle injury earlier in their series, but
It's what the
not
script said. Okay, we know this.
exactly. Like, bro, just let those script writers cook, dude. Just let them cook. Because I
They
will
knew.
say,
They knew.
bro, this past Sunday, games were lit. I know Kev's gonna go over the agenda, but the the 76ers and Celtics game four was on fire. It was a great game. And even that Nuggets and Suns game for their game four, that was in the later slate. That was like, I think it had an 8 o'clock start time.
8 o'clock. Yeah.
Bro, that was a fantastic game. Jokic dropped over 50 points. Katie and Booker were cooking. Just, it was phenomenal when it came to the Sunday slate for the NBA playoffs. But I don't want to waste any more time. Kev, I'll kick it to you for the agenda since
All
we got
good,
a
bro.
we
All
got a decent
good.
agenda.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, so guys, Kyle already alluded. We're going to go over the two game fours that just took place today between the 76ers and the Celtics, and then, of course, the obviously Denver Nuggets and Phoenix Suns. But we're also going to take a separate look into each game's potential games five, each potential. See, this is what happens when we take a couple days off. I
A
start
little
to
rusty,
lose the
bro.
flow.
A little
Just
rusty, dude.
let me
I know.
shake off the rust, right? So let me start over. Let me start over. So what I was trying to say was we are also going to look into each series game 5, so their next upcoming game, and give our thoughts as to what each team needs to do adjustment wise. Then we are also going to go into the not predictions, but we're going to go over the upcoming game 4s for the Heat and the Knicks series while also talking about the game 3. And then, of course, the Warriors and the Lakers, I mean, they go blowout for blowout. LA takes a 2-1 lead in that series as well. So we'll talk about game 4 upcoming for that as at the same time. And then Kyle's going to go over a little bit of UFC 288 that took place this Saturday. But nevertheless, we got plenty to talk about today, a whole lot of information to discuss, and it's going to be a good one.
Oh, for sure. I'm just glad that we're back. So
Back in the booth.
exactly. But Kev, I think this first game that we're to go over is going to be that 76ers and Celtics game 4, which was a phenomenal game in that Sunday afternoon slate.
I'm ashamed to say, unfortunately, being out and about pretty much all day, I was not able to watch as much of this as I would have liked. I was able to see, which is absolutely hilarious, by the way. As I loaded the game up, it was the possession where Harden hit that game winner. So I got to at least see the fun part, but for people like us, we want to be able to watch the whole game to commentate. So Kyle's going to have to carry the shoulder or carry the load here for this game because I was able to watch a lot more of the Nuggets and the Suns. But Kyle, I'll kick this one to you. The game comes down to a wire. James Harden finally steps up after basically disappearing in games 2 and 3. Goes for 42 points. Joel Embiid goes for 34. And the Sixers move on and tie this series up at 2 apiece. So, Kyle, what are your thoughts on, I guess, Philly finding a way to fight through this win?
This was a huge win for Philly. And it's as simple as this, you guys. I'm going to keep it a buck here. When it comes to Philly, they should be counting their blessings that this series is at 2 games apiece. Because as far as I see it, when it comes to this series as a whole, Boston has been the better team. Even take this game 4, for example. Philly, for 2.5 quarters, from the beginning of the first quarter, I'd say about halfway through the third quarter, Philly dominated. They were giving Boston trouble. Boston was having a difficult time scoring. James Harden and Joel Embiid, they were in a rhythm. It just seemed like Philly was going to run away with this game 4 pretty decisively. And then Boston, even though they were down 17 points at one point in this game, almost a 20-point deficit, they just slowly chipped away and ended up actually taking the lead late in the fourth quarter. And it was just something that I noticed from Philly. It felt as if the pressure was getting to them. And I think, not to say that they took their foot off the pedal, it's just Boston stepped up defensively. They were able to lock it down, and they were getting some good contributions across the board offensively. But the fact of the matter is, it took James Harden, who came up with a next level performance once again, to be able to save Philly from losing to Boston. Hits a huge 3-point shot in the corner in overtime to put them up 1. Boston was up 2 points prior to that possession beginning. And James Harden got the kick out from Joel Embiid and hit it. And unfortunately, Boston was actually able to hit a shot as the overtime expired from Marcus Smart, but he shot it after the buzzer had sounded, and Philly ends up winning this game to tie that series at 2 games apiece. But when I look back at this game, this was a game that Boston probably should have won. And I'll look at it from this perspective. When you look at Jason Tatum, Jason had 2 points in the first half, which is very uncharacteristic of Jason because Jason's their primary scorer offensively. And to be fair, he stepped up in the second half. He dropped 22 points and he finished with 24 points and 18 rebounds, which is pretty impressive. You get 24 and 20 and almost 20 from Jason Tatum. That's a pretty good stat line to carry. But had Jason just been a little bit more effective in the first half and only knocked down 1 or 2 more shots, Boston would have won this game. And, potentially they would have gone back to Boston up 3-1 for game 5. And unfortunately, it's just Boston couldn't come up with some key defensive stops late in the fourth quarter and in overtime because James Harden hit that runner. I think it was maybe like a 7 to 8 foot floater, maybe at most 10. I couldn't get the actual feet part right, but it's somewhere in between 7 to 10 feet with the running floater to tie the game before going into overtime. But it just seemed like, even though that Philly looked like the better team overall today, the fact that Boston was literally at their heels when it mattered the most really gives, you got to give a lot of credit to Boston for just being able to weather the storm and just chip away, chip away, chip away. Now, I'll say this. The biggest takeaway was James Harden. James Harden, whenever he's assertive, whenever he is essentially what we saw from Houston James Harden, taking more aggressive shots, trying to get into more of a rhythm to attack the rim. This is what I think Philly has been looking for him throughout the series. They did not get that from him in games 2 and 3, where he looked rather passive, couldn't get into a rhythm, and Philly suffered because of that. And on top of that, Joel was extremely effective. I know that he's still limited. He's got that giant knee brace on because of that knee sprain that he suffered a few weeks back. But even he was effective. So going into game 5, even though I think that Boston has looked like the better team across the board in this series, the fact that Philly is sitting at a 2-2 series tie going into game 5 in Boston, count their blessings, honestly, because I'm going to be bold here. I think Boston should have wrapped this up in a sweep, because if you take away James Harden from going God mode in game 1, and you could say in similar fashion in game 4, Boston should have won those games. Even though that Boston didn't look like the better team in game 4, the fact that James Harden saved Philly is the reason why that this series is going back to Boston at a 2-2 tie. But realistically, I know that Joel was dealing with that knee issue, and that's 100% true. But Boston honestly should have swept this series by now. And you could take that as a slight against Philly. I'm looking at this objectively as possible. Philly is lucky to be here at a 2-2 series tie. And going into game 5, they got a situation that they can take advantage of. And Boston's got to find a way to just be able to finish these games late, because in games 1 and 4, it cost them. But back on their home court, we'll see how things go. But it was a good win for Philly. They definitely needed this, because James Harden essentially saved them when it mattered the most.
I mean, I'm not going to go as far and say that they're lucky. This is why you have superstars on your team. This is why you go and assemble a Joel Embiid and James Harden dynamic duo. This is why you go and assemble a Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. It's what we're going to get into in our next segment after this, which is kind of funny. You rely on your superstars in the postseason. You rely on the people you pay the most money to. You rely on your MVP, Joel Embiid, and then, of course, James Harden really took a backseat this season in terms of his scoring output as to what he used to do in Houston, because he realized it's Joel Embiid's team. He realized that he probably needs to be a little bit more of a facilitator with the younger core or younger cast around him. But there have been flashes, such as games 1 and games 4, where James has to take a page from his Houston days, where he just kind of shoulders the team and says, I got this. Clear as day, 45 in game 1, 42 in game 5 or game 4. He goes for 8 rebounds and 9 assists as well, with 4 steals. So yes, he went negative in the plus minus scale, but he was finding ways to contribute on multiple sides of the ball. So when you talk about being able to rebound, being able to push the tempo, obviously putting the ball in the basket and scoring, getting your teammates involved, and then finding ways to be disruptive in the passing lanes and get some steals, that is exactly what teams need. Joel Embiid speaks for himself. It's probably the most dominant force in the NBA, going for 34 and 13 with 3 offensive rebounds, 34 and 13. Looked at the number on over. That is not a surprise. But when you look at the supporting cast, this is where I will agree with Kyle. Philly is lucky to an extent to be here because of supporting cast, like games like today, they didn't show up. PJ Tucker is not a scorer, so to me, his box score doesn't really matter as long as he's rebounding the ball, he's playing efficient defense, and he's finding ways to be disruptive. So, yes, he gave you 6 points. Take what you can get from PJ Tucker. Again, not a scorer, not known for being on an offensive scale to where he's going to tip it in your favor. Tobias Harris, somebody who has been consistent in these playoffs as of recent. He goes for 9 points. Tyrese Maxey has another struggling day from the field with 14 points. Then you talk about Nang with 9, Reed with 2, and then Melton goes for 0. Still finding a way to win, but it took your 2 best players to damn near combine for 80 points. That is the problem. That is the issue that I have with teams, because you want them to be more involved. You want them to contribute more. That's the word I should have used before. And when you have to rely on 33, 34-year-old James Harden to go out there and put 40 points a game, that is when I will slightly agree with Kyle. This is not a successful formula to win. This is not what's going to put you out there to win basketball games. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I don't know if James can keep this up because we saw it's been 3 games since game 1 and he's only been able to replicate game 1 success now. If my math serves me right, he's got to wait another 2 games. That means Philly would get eliminated if they have to wait 2 games for James Harden to show up again. So I'm looking for more people to get consistently involved in this offense on a regular basis. It shouldn't have to be James goes off one game, the supporting cast goes off the next game, and then James goes off again in another game or two. If James doesn't go out there and give you 40, 45, he can give you 30, 35, maybe 12 to 15 assists if everybody's making their shots. If Maxey can actually find a way to knock things down consistently, Tobias Harris can come back to what he has been. Again, PJ Tucker isn't somebody that I'm really looking for to go out there, but Melton coming off the bench cannot have 0 points. That is somebody that they lean on to spark and come off to replace Maxey. So he's definitely got to find a way to contribute a little bit more. But overall, from a Philadelphia standpoint, definitely shouldered the load, and their 2 superstars took over. Now, from a Boston point, I'm low-key starting to think that this is more Jaylen Brown's team than anything else. Yes, there have been instances where Jason goes off for high 30-point games, but he disappears in crunch time. I mean, for Jason to only have 2 points going into half, he's not shooting efficiently from the 3-point line. He was 1 of 6 this game. I believe there was a game where he was 2 or 3 of 10. Jason can't get into a rhythm. He makes up those points with his rebound, his defensive capabilities. I mean, Jason Tatum goes for 18 rebounds today and 4 blocks. So where he lacked offensively, he made up for on the defensive end. So again, from an offensive standpoint, he's struggling. And Jaylen Brown is really ascending into that, like, fourth quarter, go get a bucket. Like, I got to give it to Jaylen. But I feel like the offense really tries to force it to Jason because Jason is their guy. Jason got the supermax. He is their superstar. But Jaylen's up for a contract, and Jaylen is playing his ass off on both sides consistently. And he's shooting a lot more efficiently. 10 of 16 from the field. He had 5 assists, 3 boards. And he had a +5 on the plus-minus score with 23 points. Didn't have to go and put up all the shots that Jason did. And he didn't really have to go and force anything either. So when you talk about who means more, you can make the argument that Jaylen Brown matters more to Boston right now in these playoffs. But the reason why I'm surprised Boston lost, they got contributions from everybody. 24, 10, 21, 12, 23, and 19 from Brogdon off the bench. He's a 6th man of the year for a reason. I'm just saying Boston has been in these games every step of the way. And if they want to go and move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, you got to put away a struggling and unfortunate injured Joel Embiid and older James Harden. So I look for Boston to bounce back in this next game. They'll be back on their home floor. And I would hope that Jason has a better game from the field and is a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, I just to kind of focus on the Jason part, Kev, when it came to that first half, it just seemed like Boston as a team really struggled. And this is where you have to give credit to Philly because Philly, just from a defensive intensity perspective, they definitely ramped it up. I think that was a very disappointing game 3 performance that they had. Definitely wasn't their best effort. And you could
Run off
tell
their own floor.
it was it was kind of embarrassing because, when you go on the road and you steal game 1, home court's now in your favor. And the fact that they just laid an egg in game 3, that was very disappointing. And I imagine that Doc Rivers definitely made a point of emphasis going into game 4. It's like, guys, we have to be more intense. We have to be just in a situation where we had to bring more pressure to Boston offensively than what we did in the previous game. And I will say, when you look at Boston in that first half, Kev, if my math serves me correctly, they only scored 50 points in the first half. Granted, they did step it up in the second quarter, but that first quarter, they really struggled.
Big
And,
time.
when it came to Jason just couldn't get into a rhythm. And I will say at least Malcolm Brogdon with Boston was able to pick up the slack because I believe he had somewhere around 10 to 13
19.
points in the first half. I
Oh,
know he finished
excuse me.
in the first half. I know he finished around 20 points by the end of the game, but you know, at least they were able to buffer Jason's ineffectiveness in the first half with what Malcolm was able to bring to the table. And then, Jason dropped 22 points in the second half. So, I mean, he definitely made it up in the second half.
Yeah.
But overall, it was just my perspective of, had Jason just been a little bit more effective in the first half, Boston wins this game.
Yeah, it doesn't have to go to OT, nothing.
And we'll see what happens when we go to game 5. It's something that we'll talk about in a little bit. But overall, James Harden, he pulled out the heroics, man. I got to give him credit, because that was not an easy 3 that he hit at the end of the game. I believe he hit it over Jalen. I think Jalen was on the closeout and damn near got the block. But I got to say, James is nice with those 3-point shots, dude. Honestly, his 3-point shooting in this series has saved them in their wins. So we'll see whether or not
6 of 9, man. 6 of 9. That's efficient.
Yeah, and then it's like you said earlier, the fact that Joel dropped damn near 35 points. You got your two-headed honcho here with both James and Joel. If you're getting around 70, you're getting around 70, 80 points a game from those two, you're gonna have to find a way to slow them down, because this was probably one of those games where Boston definitely had a good chance of winning, just because Philly's role players just did not step up. Tobias Harris was really disappointing. 45 minutes on the court, and you can't even get above 10 points. Gotta get better
from the field, bro.
Yeah, that's just not gonna cut it. So
no.
I will say though, PJ Tucker was kind of grilling Joel at the end of that fourth quarter, because Al Horford was kind of giving Joel a little bit of trouble late in that game, and PJ got in Joel's face like, you cannot let it get this pressure. You can't allow this pressure to get to you. And fortunately, they were able to make their way into an overtime period and then end up winning it, really just based off of James hitting that critical 3-point shot. But
crazy.
We'll see. We'll see how this series plays out when it goes back to game 5. But up next, we got another really good game here to go over from the Sunday slate. This was the later game on the Sunday slate of NBA playoff games, and that was the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns matchup. This was an intense game. It was back and forth, and Phoenix ends up tying the series 2 games apiece after winning game 4 by the score of 129-124. Even when we look at this game in particular, I really thought the superstars from both teams just balled out here. You could start with Phoenix. Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, they were just utterly amazing in this game. Devin Booker scored 36 points alongside Kevin Durant. He dropped 36 as well. And then when you look at the other side, when you look at Denver, Jokic led all scorers with 53 points. An absolutely phenomenal performance from Nikola Jokic. And Jamal Murray had a pretty nice game as well. He dropped 28 points. So, you look at Jokic and Murray, they combined for 81 points. And then you look at Dev and KD, they combined for 72. So the superstars definitely showed up. But if I had to say, it was the role players for Phoenix who really made their presence felt in the fourth quarter, especially Landry Shamet, who came up with some critical 3-point shots that extended Phoenix's lead over Denver late in that fourth quarter, and was by and large a huge factor in the reason why Phoenix has now tied the series at 2 games apiece, with game 5 going back to Denver. So Kev, to get this one to you, just what are your thoughts about Phoenix tying this series at 2 games apiece against Denver?
Well, I mean, first, we talked about this, right? The bench needed to step up. The bench needed to give more effective minutes. They needed to produce on the offensive side. They also needed to produce to make up for Chris Paul's lack of his presence. Shamet stepped up today. Obviously, Terrence Ross only scored 9, but those were critical buckets at specific times of the game. And when you just look at how Phoenix was able to respond to Jokic's 53, which, by the way, Kyle, I think this puts to bed your discussion earlier this year. If Denver were to fall, it ain't because of Jokic. It has nothing to do with Jokic's MVPs being hollow or meaningless. Obviously, he didn't end up winning this MVP, which that's neither here nor there. The guy's busting his ass, right? I think only him and Wilt Chamberlain are the only players at the center position to score 50-plus points in a playoff game. That's some elite company. Not to mention he had a double-double in assists. Not rebounds, assists. And they still lost this game. And then you go and you actually look at the box score as a unit, and you have Jamal Murray going for 28, but everybody else was non-existent. The bench has a combined total of 11 points, with Jeff Green going for 5, Bruce Brown going for 5, and whoever this Braun guy is, 1. I think that's the guy they drafted from Kansas. 11 points, and then the guy that I'm going to destroy right now, but I'll savor that for the last point. Kadavius Caldwell-Pope isn't somebody that's going to go out there and score. He's supposed to, 3 and D kind of guy. He had 10 points. Aaron Gordon, not an offensively sound guy. Again, he was given 10 shots. He made 5 of them. He had 11 points, 6 rebounds. Again, not somebody you would expect to go out there and give you 20, 25 points. I would hope for a little bit more from him because he's played pretty solid this postseason, but he has drawn the assignment of guarding Kevin Durant for the majority of this series, so that does wear everybody down. This man right here, Michael Porter Jr., he's the problem to me. He's the issue. 6'10", highly coveted draft pick, a guy that slipped because of his issues in his health, has missed multiple seasons, has had multiple surgeries, and is making upwards of $30 to $35 million a year. I actually pulled up NBA players that are within that salary range, within his bracket, because it's broken into different brackets, right? So just within his bracket alone, you have Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year, just some hardware that he's had. Gordon Hayward, overpaid, neither here nor there. Bam Adebayo, somebody who's made it to the finals, somebody who has made multiple All-Star games. You have Donovan Mitchell, arguably the best shooting guard in the NBA. Then Michael Porter Jr. hasn't really done anything. DeAndre Ayton, been to the finals, All-Star, All-Pro, whatever the hell. Then you got Shai, SGA in Oklahoma City, one of the best guards in the NBA. D'Angelo Russell, revitalizing his career in Los Angeles. Jamal Murray, one of the best point guards when healthy in the NBA. And Brandon Ingram, arguably one of the more talented up-and-coming threes in the NBA. Michael Porter Jr. is not on their level. He's not on any of their levels. He got a contract when Luka Doncic got a contract. He's making over $200 million over the course of the 5 years or 6 years, whatever Supermax contract he signed. On what planet does Michael Porter Jr. deserve that contract? That was, in my opinion, Denver going out and, just trying to hold on to him because they were scared they were going to lose him. They felt like, Luka got a contract, we got to pay Michael. No. Michael Porter Jr.'s career stats are just not impressive. He's a 15-point per game scorer. He shoots 50% from the field. He's 41%, almost 42% from 3. That's great. But he doesn't play full seasons. In his entire NBA career, hasn't played a full season. This year he played 62. Last year he played 9. 61 the year before that. 55 the year before that. And he played 1 in his rookie year. We talk about Zion being unavailable, but Zion puts up points. We talk about Zion being unavailable, but Zion is an animal and an immediate game changer. I think we need to start talking about Michael Porter Jr. as well, because his availability, iffy. And his performance in the playoffs, I mean, Kyle and I were texting throughout that game. That pull-up 3 he had in transition with about 2.5 minutes to go was absolutely atrocious. In transition, you stop and pop for 3 and then almost get blocked from behind and then complain about a foul that wasn't there because DeAndre Ayton swatted and missed completely. That was a bad shot selection by you. And if you're going to be paid $30 million and you're going to be arguably the third option on this team, 11 points? When you really look at the stat line of what he's been performing in the playoffs, 11 this game, 21 the game before, 5, 11, 8, 15. That's $30 million worth of basketball? Because it sure as shit isn't that much money to me. I might get more performance out of Tim Hardaway Jr., and he's just pulling from 3. I'm just putting it out there. If Denver wants to win this series, yes, other people are going to have to step up, but Michael Porter Jr. is making one hell of a bag to get some cardio out there. And the fact that Mike Malone is out here giving him these green lights to pull up whenever he wants, it's out of pocket to me. And I think that Michael Porter Jr. needs to be held accountable for it. This is going back to Denver. The series is tied 2-2. I'm giving all the credit in the world to Kevin Durant. Devin Booker's been on one, absolutely incredible. Landry Shamet is the savior of this game because he knocked down almost every single shot in the fourth quarter when given the opportunity. But when you talk about losing Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton not really showing up on a religious basis, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker have answered the call. They score over 80 points combined, and I believe they gave us a statistic at the end of this game. In the last 2 games combined, Devin Booker is shooting 79% from the field. The rim is this big for Devin. He sees no laps. He sees absolutely nothing but a ginormous bucket because that's what Devin is. He is a walking bucket this series, and he needs to be stopped. But until Denver figures out a solution or gets Jokic some help, this series can find a way to turn around because I believe the momentum has 100% shifted to the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, this was something that, to be quite honest with you guys, I did not see Phoenix tying this series 2 games apiece. I think if I remember correctly, um, I think I discussed the possibility of Phoenix winning game 3, but I saw that Denver was going to win game 4 and then kick it back to Denver for game 5, up 3 games to 1. That didn't happen. And it was simply just because Dev, KD, and their bench showed up. And that's been huge. Obviously, I think when it comes to not having Chris Paul, they're going to have to get those points and contributions elsewhere on the team. And it came in the form of Landry Shamet and Terrence Ross. When you look back to, I think it was game 2, they scored 4 points off of their bench. Like, it was atrocious. You're not going to be able to win basketball games that way. KD and Dev, they could drop you 90 points combined between the two of them. If you're getting 4 points from your bench, you're not winning basketball games. I don't care. But the fact of the matter is that Phoenix is getting just good contributions across the board. And honestly, with this series going back to Denver in game 5, Kev, we got a series. And for me, I love it. So, looking at this game 4 in particular, this was honestly just a back and forth affair. And this was just a great game to watch if you love offensive basketball, because you got Devin Booker and KD combining for 72 points. They both dropped 36 points apiece. And then you look at Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Jokic has 53 points. The dude was a walking bucket. Jamal Murray had a very nice performance. Those two combined for 81 points. When you're able to outscore the likes of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in the same game, that tip of the cap to you guys. I mean, they definitely showed up. It's just the biggest difference in this game was Phoenix was extremely effective behind the 3-point line. And it wasn't just KD and Dev getting it done. It was Landry Shamet. Like Kev said, the fact that Landry Shamet was not knocking down some big time 3-pointers in that fourth quarter to extend their fourth quarter lead over Denver, that pretty much gave them enough room to work with to get them this win to tie the series at 2 games apiece. And when it comes to Denver, it just, when I look at their bench production, it just didn't show up compared to Phoenix. When you look at those first 2 games, Denver was just getting it done across the board. That game 2 was a little bit ugly, but both teams relatively struggled. But, you look at this game 4, you're thinking, if Denver's putting up 124 points, I imagine Mike Malone's got to be pretty happy about that offensive performance. But when you damn near give up 130 points on the other end, it's going to be a tough one to look back at. I think when it came to what Mike Malone was focusing when it comes to defending Phoenix as an offense, you got to be able to contain Dev and KD as much as possible, and you're going to have to make somebody else beat you. They did find that guy in reference to Phoenix, and it was Landry Shamet in that fourth quarter. I think Denver can live with that because they were able to limit KD and Dev more effectively in the fourth quarter compared to the first 3 quarters, because they really had no answer for Dev in the third quarter. He popped off. KD was consistent throughout the game, but really Landry Shamet was the guy who really stepped up and made some critical plays for Phoenix when they needed it. Now, when we see this game 5, this is going to come down to which bench is going to show up. Is it going to be Denver? Is it going to be Phoenix? I know we'll talk about game 5 in a little bit, but overall, if you wanted offensive basketball, if you wanted some high scoring, high percentage shooting, this was the game to be locked into. And, now it's a 3-game series. 2-2 apiece. We'll see how this plays out. But overall, it was a great performance from Phoenix. And honestly, the fact that they were able to rally, being down 2-0, losing those first 2 road games, I was a little bit skeptical of them getting back-to-back wins at home against Denver, especially with Denver being the best team in the West. They proved it, and we'll see whether or not that the Suns can continue their momentum, or if Denver can get it back in their favor when we go to Game 5.
I mean, it's efficiency, right? When you talk about percentages, these numbers are huge, and people need to understand shooting this efficient from the field is difficult at any level. But then you talk about the playoffs: 11 of 19 from the field for Kevin Durant, 12 of 13 from the free throw line. Then Devin Booker's 14 of 18, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. This is what you need from your megastars. This is the type of play that wins championships. Now, I know we countered this just last week by saying they needed more help, not relying on them. But when you're shooting this efficiently at a clip, when you are putting up the numbers that these two are putting up, and then you're not crucifying your team on the other end, you're not getting back, you're not playing defense, you're continuing to take bad shots. Both of these guys saw the ball go in relatively early and or got to the free throw line at will. Limited the turnover aspiration. Well, I can't say limited because they actually both had 5 turnovers combined. I was looking at the total number of turnovers. When you talk about Devin Booker and the pace that he's on historically from a field goal percentage, the man can't miss lately. Finally, the bench steps up and knocks down some key shots so I can take the pressure off, because Kyle and I talked about it. You got to make somebody else beat you in that fourth quarter. And that just so happened to be Landry Shamet, who was knocking down pretty much everything. It looked like Ray Allen in his prime. So shout out to Shamet. The series goes back to Denver. I'm curious to see what ends up happening with this whole Nikola Jokic pushing the Phoenix Suns owner on trying to get the ball from the out-of-bounds section. Kyle, I mean, just briefly, people are going to over-dramatize it because of the media. It's 2023 and not 1983, so people are a lot more sensitive nowadays.
They're soft. They're just soft.
So I just want to get your thought. Do you think Nikola is justified for what he did? Do you think he's going to end up getting suspended or at least fined?
He shouldn't get suspended over that.
I pray he doesn't.
Look, if they suspend Nikola Jokic over that, then
the script is crazy.
Denver's going to feel slighted.
100%.
Because, Kev, we both looked at that. And I will say, when it comes to the Suns owner, I think he's learning from the players, because that was a flop. Granted, I know that Jokic put a little bit of an elbow out there, but that did not look like a really hard. I don't even want to characterize it as a shove, just because
it was a nudge.
He was getting the ball back. He just wanted to get the ball back, and honestly, I think kind of get away from the little, I guess the little scuffle, little skirmish that was going on that part of the floor. And I just think Jokic was locked in and getting the ball back. I think
just find it funny because the NBA talks about protecting its players. You're a fan in that moment. You're not an owner. And even if you are an owner, it doesn't matter. Mike Malone at the press conference at the podium said it best.
I love this.
He does not give a shit. If you're going to interrupt the game and you're going to put your physical body involved, courtside or not, owner or not, status or not, you are interfering with that game, and you are interfering with the man's ability to do his job. You are in the direct path of Nikola Jokic trying to get the ball back. And if you're on top of him, touching him, if you're on top of him, whatever, if you're in the vicinity of him, what do you expect to happen? What if it was one of your players? You'd be pissed as shit if the Nuggets owner was in the way of Kevin Durant trying to get the ball. If you're down points, you're talking about emotions are flying high, competitive nature's flying high. The Nuggets are losing, and they're trying to get the ball in so they can get a play. And you're just going to be that guy to like assert yourself and put your body in front of. I think it's a classless act on the owner, and he 100% knew what he was doing. And for you to sell the flop, and for the narrative that is going to spin for the next 48 to 72 hours, is going to be ridiculous. So let's tone it down on like a suspension, because people all over social media are like, he has no right to touch him. The owner touched him first and got in the way. So realistically, who's at fault here?
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at it, I think the Suns owner, I don't think he was really involved in, like, there was like an initial like little skirmish that was off to the side of where the owner was sitting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not going to be like super critical of the owner just because, I mean, look, is he holding onto the ball? Yes. But the game's already been interrupted because of this little skirmish that is taking place in that corner to begin with. And I will say Jokic was a little aggressive in trying to rip the ball out of the owner's hands, but I think he just wanted to get the ball away from that situation and just get back onto the court. I think that was what he was trying to do. And
Yeah, agree. There's no mouse intent
I
there. There's no
no,
negative. It's
no,
yo. I'm trying to do my
it
job here. I'm
was,
trying to
it was
play.
like, whenever I bring up an elbow, everybody's like, oh, it's going to be a hard elbow. It's like, it was literally, like you said, a nudge. I
And
will
he
say
had
that.
to.
I will say though, when it comes to the Suns owner, that was a grade A flop. He's learning from the best, apparently, with his own players. But overall, if the NBA actually hands down Jokic a suspension over that, well, first of all, I think that they're just favoring Phoenix than to win the series. Like,
I would say so.
I mean, at that point, if I were Denver, I'd feel a little bit slighted. It's like, yeah,
A
this is
little
rigged.
bit.
It's
Your
like,
best player
like
gets suspended
the
for
i-
that. It's not
the
even an
idea
official.
the idea of, oh, this is rigged is going to be real if
Oh yeah.
Jokic gets suspended over
There'll be no
that.
getting away from that.
So, and I mean, Jokic dropped 53 points. I mean, if you remove Jokic from Game 5 over that, no, no, this is. I can't believe that we're actually entertaining this possibility. But you know what, Kev? I'm gonna be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if they suspend him. If the NBA is going to be that soft and potentially suspend Jokic over that to set some sort of precedent, say, hey, we're not going to allow this. They're soft. They are soft.
Oh yeah.
So I'll leave it at that. But
Yeah, exactly. No reason to drag it out.
Nonetheless, great game. Glad that Phoenix was able to win both of those games at home back to back, even though that I was initially skeptical about that. But overall, it's going to be a very interesting Game 5 when we see that take place. Kev, do you want to go over these Game 5s next, or do you want to go over the Heat and Knicks?
Well, we
for
can
the
we
game
can go
four?
over. Let's tackle the game fives, but obviously since they are Tuesday, let's just keep it brief. Obviously, both series now are tied 2-2 for their respective games or series that are the 76ers and Celtics, and then obviously what we just talked about in the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns.
Mhm.
So, just your quick thoughts with Game 5 right around the corner, and both teams just finding ways to just, I guess, win these tough games, because it's different for each series, because obviously in Philly gets the upset, then Boston ties it, then Boston blows them out, and now Philly wins another nail biter. So for that series, it might be a little different as opposed to Denver winning 2, then Phoenix winning 2. Let's go 76ers and Celtics first. Game 5, back in Beantown on Tuesday. Who do you got winning and why?
I am going to go with Boston in this one. And similar to what I said about how Game 4 played out, even though that I think that Philly was the better team throughout most of that game, the fact that Boston damn near won that game really goes to show Boston's ability to be able to weather the storm and be able to persevere and damn near steal one in Philly. And I think, being back within the comforts of your own home arena, I think they're going to take Philly to task here. I really think that Boston's going to be able to respond, and they're going to be able to respond effectively. My main point when it comes to Boston is Jason Tatum needs to be more effective in the first half. If he does that consistently in Game 5, Boston should win this game by about 10 to 15 points, because you look back at that Game 4 performance, he dropped 2 points in the first half. It's very uncharacteristic of Jason to be that off in the first half. He stepped it up in the second half, don't get me wrong. But I think going into Game 5, I think if you're looking at this from Boston's perspective, they got to feed him early and they got to get him into a rhythm consistently. And then on top of that, you got to look at guys like Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. I think respectively, both of those guys had pretty good Game 4 performances. It's just unfortunate that Marcus hit that last shot in overtime about a half second too late, because he did knock down that late 3-point shot in overtime. It was just a tad bit behind the buzzer. So if they're able to get that type of consistency against Philly, that's going to serve them well. But if you're looking at Boston, Boston's got to find a way to slow down James Harden, and that's an understatement. There have been 2 games in particular where James Harden has popped off and has realistically saved Philly in this series. He had the 45-point performance in Game 1. He drops 42 points in Game 4, hits the game-winning shot in Game 4 when Boston was up 2 points late in that Game 4. You got to be able to contain him. you have to get him into a situation where it's representative of what we saw from James Harden in game 2 and 3, if you're looking at it from Boston's perspective, because James was off in both of those games. And on top of that, you have to be able to find a way to limit Joel Embiid. Even though that Joel is limited with that knee injury, he's wearing that giant knee brace, he still dropped over 30 points in game 4, even despite being limited. So I think the main thing is, Boston's going to have to be able to slow down effectively both James and Joel, which is a very difficult task because both these guys can score at will. And as long as they're able to effectively slow down Philly's role players, I think that Boston should win this game handily. And, if you're looking at it from a Philly perspective, you have to be able to continue the masterclass performances from both Joel and James Harden to be able to win this game 5. But your role players have to step up. Tobias Harris has to be more effective than scoring 9 points in game 4. Tyrese Maxey, I know he has the ability to go off for 20 to 25 points. You can't put up teen-digit numbers when, honestly, he could definitely play at a higher level than that. It's just overall, Philly's role players are going to have to step up here. It goes without saying that this can't just be James Harden and Joel Embiid carrying this team to the promised land. It may get you an individual game here and there, but to get a series, that's not an effective formula for winning. And even though that Philly has tied this series at 2 games apiece, I think that Boston has been overwhelmingly the better team in this series. It's just that at certain points, Philly has really executed at the most critical moment to be able to get over the hump. But I think in this game 5 in particular, I think Philly loses this one. I think Boston secures this game 5 win at home, and they will go up 3-2 in the series, with game 6 going back to Philly.
I'm definitely going with Boston. I just think that they're going to have to make simple adjustments, but this is going to be solely dependent upon which James Harden you get. When Joel Embiid is on the floor, he's basically an unguardable force. We know that no matter what bodies they put on him, he provides a difficult matchup, whether it's Robert Williams, Grant Williams, or Al Horford. Joel's going to get his buckets, even on one leg. That's not a problem. But what James Harden is Philly going to get? Are they going to get the James Harden that is aggressive at the free throw line, consistently trying to have defenses collapse? Or are you going to get the James Harden that is chucking up jump shots, not getting back on defense? What we saw in games 2 and 3. So for Philly to be competitive in general, James Harden's got to put up 30 plus points. You've already seen that that's the only way for them to win. Now, when it comes to Boston, they have to get contributions like they've gotten from everybody, but Jason Tatum is the key. He has to get it going early. He cannot have 2 points in the first half and then have to bombard everything to take away shots from Jalen. That is usually my issue here. It's either one or the other that have a hot hand, and the other one gets cold to when the other one that has been getting cold wants to get back into a rhythm. It's too late. The other team makes a run, and this is how Philly has kind of stayed in these games. If both guys can get it going, I know there's only one basketball. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but Jalen goes for his first couple shots. Jalen has a good mismatch. That's different. But Jason Tatum trying to force his way into an offense, it's just not wise. Get Jason going early. Obviously, save Jalen for the fourth quarter because that's when he thrives. He doesn't miss. He doesn't take bad shots. I think, truthfully, Boston can find a way to win. Obviously, Boston has had the better bench. Malcolm Brogdon has been absolutely incredible. I think that the paint presence that Philadelphia provides with the dominant force that is Joel Embiid has provided a kind of spark for Philadelphia because he's just performed very well despite having an injured leg. I believe that they're going to make it competitive. As long as it's not another blowout, to be honest, I really don't care. But I do have Boston winning because I feel that they see Jason struggling. They see Jalen is going to be able to get out there and pretty much score at will because, to be honest with you, I think he's that guy right now in the playoffs. He doesn't really struggle. And even when he does, he doesn't really force many shots up. So I got Boston winning another nail biter. I think that Jason and Jalen are going to go for 30 apiece. And I do think that Malcolm Brogdon is probably going to put up anywhere from 15 to 20 points like he has been off the bench. Marcus Smart is critical as well. Got to keep him on the floor, keep him out of foul trouble because we know that he is very pesty. We know that he can get involved with the scuffles and kind of just to disrupt James Harden's overall flow. But again, I got Boston winning game 3 in Boston.
I mean, I got to say, game 5 in Boston is definitely going to be a fun environment for sure.
For sure.
I'm just banking more on Boston to be able to bounce back from that game 4 loss. And I'm actually a little bit more confident that Boston will be able to win this game, potentially in a double-digit win. There's definitely the possibility of it being a nail biter, very similar to what we saw in Game 4. Um, I'm just going to reiterate the point that I brought up earlier. I just think that Boston has been the better team so far in this series, even though that this series is tied 2 games apiece. I think we'll see that play itself out when these teams go back at it on Tuesday. But hey, if it's a nail biter from beginning to end, I'm here for it. I'll take that any day of the week. So
in the playoffs, guys,
we just want good basketball.
Exactly. I don't think any sports fan that isn't obviously personally involved, like a direct fan, like Kyle and the Lakers, you have to take bias aside. For entertainment purposes, nobody wants to see a blowout. If it's your team, that's different because it's the playoffs. You need wins to get to the. It's totally different. I get that, but from an entertainment standpoint, you're like, I'd still like to see a good game. We don't got to blow them out by 30, but we just want to see competitive natures. Well, I do because Kyle's team is still in the playoffs, so it's different for me and him. But swing me this Denver one.
All right, you ready? So
maybe.
All right, let's do it. So up next, we've got Denver. We've got the Denver Nuggets going up against the Phoenix Suns. Really, just to give you guys a quick recap of the series, Denver won the first 2 games at home. Phoenix was able to respond in games 3 and 4, win their home games. Game 4, Kev, was just electric from beginning to end. Just the offensive firepower that both teams displayed was something to behold. And, no prediction yet here. I'm just saying, like, if that continues going into Game 5, I'm here for it. I will have my popcorn ready and just watch these guys be able to display the skills that they have, especially in Game 5. These Game 5s can really dictate a series. And I think we're going to see just the intensity of both Phoenix and Denver just brought to a whole new level when we get to this Game 5 when it takes place in Denver. So, Kev, just to kick this one to you, when it comes to the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets in this Game 5, who do you think is going to win and why?
So I want to pick Denver, right? Because I don't want to sleep on Nikola Jokic. I don't want to doubt him. I don't want to sit here and pretend like he is not one of the, if not the best player in the NBA, depending on who you ask. But because of Phoenix finally trusting some vets, Phoenix finally leaning on their bench and saying, yo, we need help, I think that has alleviated the pressure off enough of Kevin Durant. Because Devin Booker's been getting buckets all postseason. It's Kevin that has been a little inconsistent. Yes, Kevin scored double digits. Yes, he scored in the 20s. But when we talk about efficiency from the field, those bad shots after a few attempts can make a lead grow for the other team or just overall kind of leave your offense stagnant to an extent. I think that with them discovering they can trust Terrence Ross, Landry Shamet can hit some timely shots. Cameron Payne has not necessarily stepped up, but has filled the role of a starting point guard pretty solid. I think that Monty Williams has gotten this team rallied up, excited, and to show that they can still compete in these playoffs. You know that there's a problem when your best player in Denver is scoring 50-some-odd points and you're still losing the game when your second best player goes for 28. That's over 30 points. You can't be losing games like that. Outputs like that don't happen every day. Yes, your superstars have to try, but to have nights like this where they do score 80 and you still lose, it's not a good look. Michael Porter Jr.'s got to step up huge. And the role players of the Denver Nuggets need to find ways to put the ball in the hoop and alleviate some of that pressure off of Nikola Jokic like the Phoenix Suns have been doing for Devin Booker and KD the last 2 games. Overall, I'll just keep it brief. I got Phoenix winning because I think the momentum has shifted to the point where I think that they're going to maybe even take the series. And depending on the outcome of whatever happens with this Nikola Jokic scuffle, if he misses time, if it causes a disruption, I don't know. I think that Denver may be in trouble because if you can't win with 80 points combined between your 2 best players, I'm not really seeing another opportunity for you to steal one away from Phoenix right now.
And I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction. I am going to go with Denver in this one. And Kev, when we looked at this series as a whole so far, the home team has definitely been the biggest benefactor. With both home teams, with Denver winning both games 1 and 2, and then Phoenix winning games 3 and 4, respectively, at home. I think that trend is going to continue. And for me personally, I'd have to see it go in the other direction before I believe it, just because, when you're 4 games in and home court advantage definitely has seemed to play a factor in this series. I'm going to roll with Denver in this one. And when I look at Denver, I think that when it comes to how they're going to win this game 5, I think it's going to be more on the defensive side, because when you give up almost 130 points in game 4, I bet you Mike Malone is going to make that adjustment when they're looking at film. It's like, guys, we have to ramp up the defensive intensity. We have to slow down Devin Booker and KD more effectively, because you look back at that game 4, Dev and KD were extremely effective, with both of them dropping 36 points respectively. And like Kev said earlier, Devin Booker, when it comes to how effective that he's been in this series so far, that's the biggest problem that they have to address. I mean, it got to the point where Denver was sending double teams against Dev in game 4, and he was still knocking down shots behind the 3-point line. So I think they're going to take a very similar template when it came to how they adjusted to be able to slow down Dev and KD in the fourth quarter of game 4. But they're going to have to find a way to be able to effectively close out their role players, because Landry Shamet popped off huge in the fourth quarter for Phoenix. And I think this is going to be one of those scenarios where if Phoenix were to win this game, it's going to be because Denver's going to lock down on KD and Dev as best as possible, and the role players are going to step up. If Denver loses that way, then that's just going to be something that they're going to have to accept. But I think overall, I'm actually expecting a lower scoring game than what we saw in game 4. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love an offensive game as much as the next guy. But if I had to guess, I think Denver's going to have to come out with the mindset of trying to keep Phoenix around 100 points. If they are able to keep them under 100 points, that's going to serve them even better. And they have been able to prove that. They did that in game 2, in probably one of the more uglier games that we've seen in this series so far. But it's going to be Jokic. Jokic is going to lead the way. Jokic is probably going to put up somewhere around 25, 30 points. Jamal's going to put up at least somewhere around 20 to 25 points consistently. But they're going to have to get better contributions from their role players. Michael Porter Jr., he's got to step up. He has relatively been inconsistent throughout not just this playoff series, but throughout most of the playoffs so far. And I don't know if he's going to go out there and score 20, 25 points. I highly doubt that. But if he can get you 15 points, it gives you something to work with. This is one of those games where Denver's going to have to step up the defensive intensity, and they're going to have to hope to God that they could slow down Dev and KD, because if they can't, Denver's going to be in a bad situation. And when it comes to Phoenix is going to have to be able to slow down Jokic. Jokic just dropped 53 points in game 4. I mean, Jokic, I think Kev brought up this stat earlier. Only Jokic and Wilt have been able to put up, I think it's now multiple 50-point playoff game performances. Yeah. And,
at the center position.
At the center position, which is just utterly crazy, just how effective Jokic has been, relatively speaking, in the short amount of playoff time that he's played so far in his career. Phoenix is not going to allow a 53-point performance again against Jokic, but I still think Jokic is going to go out there and be extremely effective for Denver. It's just overall, I think this is going to be a much more competitive game than we saw in some of these earlier games. Maybe like if you look back to game 1 was relatively solid when it came to Denver's performance over Phoenix. But overall, I think it's going to be a very back and forth game. It's going to be a competitive one, but I'm going to give a slight edge to Denver in this one. They would go up 3-2 in the series. And Kevin, I'm going to be honest with you, I think this series has 7 games written all over it. Just because I think home court advantage is really going to play a factor for both teams. So even though I think Denver's going to win game 5, I think there's a very good chance that Phoenix can respond and win game 6. But in this game 5 specifically, I'm going to go with Denver to go up 3-2 in the series.
No matter what, playoff basketball is just very entertaining to watch. Thankfully, Phoenix found a way to come back and tie this. So again, like Kyle and I have already restated, this is going to be the series to monitor. But we do have a couple of other games that we are looking forward to for tomorrow night. Well, by the time you guys hear this evening. So yeah, Kyle, we got the Knicks and the Heat and the Warriors and the Lakers. What do we got first?
So I'll kick this one to you. So going back to your roots here with New York. So up next, we got the New York Knicks going up against the Miami Heat. This will take place on Monday night, like Kev said. This is game 4 of this series. As it stands right now, the Heat are up 2-1 over the New York Knicks. Game 3 was a decisive win for the Heat over the New York Knicks. They won by the score of 105-86. Jimmy Butler definitely hobbled by that ankle injury, but still went out there and damn near dropped 30 points for Miami in that Game 3 performance. And when it came to the Knicks were just ineffective from a shooting perspective in that game. Like I said, they only scored 86 points, lost by almost 20 points in this Game 3. And if they're going to try to get back in this series, this is a must-win game for the Knicks going into Game 4. And when it comes to the Heat may potentially smell blood in the water here because they have an opportunity to go up 3-1 when this series transitions back to New York for Game 5. So it's a pivotal game for both teams here. So Kev, to kick this one to you, we've got the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat going at it in Game 4. Who do you think is going to win and why?
I have to say New York because, again, I think that they can do it. My issue is, one, Jalen Brunson seemed to have tweaked his already sore ankle, so that's something to monitor. Two, the Knicks were not understanding the assignment. They were taking horrible shots. Their shot selection in this game was atrocious. They took 43s, and they made 8 of them. That is 20% from 3. Not a successful formula to win, if you ask me. Then you go and you talk about efficiency from the field. They took 91 shots. They made 31. That is 34% from the field. Not how you win basketball games. And then we talk about defensively. Outside of limiting Miami in the fourth quarter to 18 points, the Heat were able to get pretty much anywhere they wanted on the floor. Bam Adebayo played well. Jimmy put up 28 points. I mean, everybody was contributing to the point where you're like, they're not killing us with one particular person like they normally do. But Miami also didn't shoot efficiently from the field either. Miami had 35 of 90 from the field at 38%, 38.9. So let's round that up to 39% from the field. 21.9% from the three-point line, round that up to 22%. They were 7 of 32. I don't really know what it is because even in the turnover margin, they were tied. They both had 13 turnovers. New York just could not get into a rhythm whatsoever. Bam, like I said, had a great game with 17 and 12. He actually was able to provide somewhat of a spark to an extent. He was hitting some mid-range shots. He had some tip-ins. I mean, Bam just looked very, very aggressive from the jump. And, I mean, when you really look at it, Strus was able to knock down some big shots. Kyle Lowry was able to put up some big shots. And, again, we all know Jimmy Butler's going to do what he needs to do. But the crazy part is Kevin Love and Gabe Vincent, 2 big contributors throughout this postseason for the Miami Heat, were relatively deemed ineffective. Gabe only had 5. Kevin Love only had 4. That's not how Miami normally wins, but for whatever reason, Miami was able to pull away. They scored 29 points in 3 of the 4 quarters they played, and I think that was just enough between the inefficiency shooting from the Knicks and Miami getting it done somehow, some way. It was a massive difference. The biggest turnaround for me was the free throw line. The Knicks were 16 of 22, and the Heat were 28 of 31. Some would say that's favoritism from the referees. I would just say that the Knicks were not as aggressive as Miami. And I'm going to continue to circle back on this for the Knicks, man. Julius Randle's got to play better. He's been looking like a lot of a Chuck. He's looking like someone that can't make definitive decisions with the ball. He's looking like somebody that is consistently going to turn the ball over whenever he touches it. And for whatever reason, when he's not locked in, when he's not focused, you can see him kind of like drag his way through the court. If he knows the ball's not coming his way, he'll kind of sit in the corner sulking. The Knicks need better contributions. I think this is Jalen Brunson's worst game that he's had, and I think that he needs to turn it around because he has truly been the anchor of this team along with Josh Hart on the hustle side. But I think the Knicks are going to find a way to turn this around. I think Jalen Brunson, I think that obviously Mitchell Robinson are all going to find a way to contribute to the point where the Knicks win a nail-biter. And I think the Knicks find a way to tie this series, man. I really, really, really have faith in them that they can do it. Again, the home team has not let me down through this postseason. But if Miami were to find a way to go up 3-1, low-key, I think who comes out of this series is going to go to the finals. If Miami goes up 3-1, this is over. That's why I want the Knicks to come back at least and tie this up so this can go 7. The Knicks cannot shoot inefficiently. The Knicks need to find a way to finish at the free throw line as well. And they need to find a way to slow down Jimmy Butler. No matter how it's done, Do what you need to do. The Knicks need to find a way to get this back to the Garden.
Kev, I'm going with the Heat on this one. I think this one actually to me is an easy one as far as the prediction goes. And Kev, let me ask you this real quick. When you look at the Miami Heat, do they look like an 8 seed to you?
Not the way they're playing. Hell no.
Because Kev, they've been playing like a top 4 seed throughout this entire playoff stretch. I know that, early in that Milwaukee series that Giannis got hurt and it played a factor, but I mean, Jimmy
For sure.
was just literally unstoppable throughout that series. And even going into this series, with Jimmy being limited, missing game 2 with that rolled ankle from game 1, he went out and dropped almost 30 points in game 3. And you look back at that game 3 performance from both teams, Miami won by almost 20 points. And one of the things that I look at with New York is, Kev, they just can't get into a rhythm consistently from a shooting perspective. I mean, you already laid out the stats for me, so I don't really have to go over them again. But I don't see this turning around because I think that Miami knows the situation at hand. And it was like I said in the lead up, I think they smell blood in the water. I think they're going to go for it, and they're going to go for the jugular to go up 3-1 to not even give the Knicks a chance to get back into this series. So overall, when it comes to the Knicks, like Kev said, I think a lot of the pressure is on them because if they go down 3-1 in this series, it's a wrap. It's over. And when it comes to the Heat, honestly, just continue the path that you're on. Play effective defense against Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett and allow other guys from the Knicks to beat you. If that happens to be Julius Randle, if that happens to be guys like Emmanuel Quickley or Josh Hart, I think the Heat will live with that every day of the week. As long as they are opening up space for Jimmy Butler, albeit limited, but limited is kind of a loose term here because I thought Jimmy was still extremely effective despite having that ankle injury. And then you look at guys that have stepped up tremendously for the Heat so far, not only in this series, but throughout the playoffs. Kevin Love has made some critical plays for them down this stretch. Bam Adebayo has been pretty locked down in the paint area overall, not only in this series, but throughout the playoffs. And then you're getting good contributions from guys like Max Strus. Kyle Lowry's veteran presence has been nothing short of phenomenal for Miami. I think really the only thing that I would focus on for Miami is to get guys like maybe like Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent into a little bit more of a rhythm, because you look back at that game 4 performance, some of their 3-point shots they are typically accustomed to hitting, they missed some of those shots in game 3. And I think that there'll be some open opportunities for them to cash in on going into this game 4. It's just, to me, I think the momentum is definitely on the side of the Heat here. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And when it comes to the Knicks, I know that Jalen Brunson has been solid for them throughout this entire postseason. He's been great. It's just unfortunately for them, they just can't get good contributions from Julius Randle. I think if Julius Randle plays to the level that he was playing throughout multiple spurts throughout the regular season, I think that this series would be far more competitive. It just seems, from a big picture perspective, it just seems like Miami is ahead of the Knicks, not only just from a player personnel perspective, but from a mental perspective. It just seems as if Miami is just running on all cylinders. Jimmy has this team laser focused. And it just seems like when it comes to the Knicks, just if something doesn't go right, they have a turnover, they have an open 3 that they miss, it just seems like it deflates them more as a unit. And it just seems to me that with the way that Miami's been playing, and that's despite the fact that they've been relatively injured throughout this playoff run so far, because I don't think they're going to get Tyler Hero back anytime soon from that broken hand, or I think he broke 2 of his fingers to be specific. And, even with Jimmy being limited, they almost beat the Knicks in the Garden in game 2. And the fact that Jimmy's back out there and he's still putting up consistent numbers, I don't see a way for the Knicks to be able to get back into this series. If they're able to find a way to slow down Jimmy Butler, that's their best shot. Until then, this is the Heat all day. And I think as long as Jimmy's scoring, I don't think the Knicks are going to be able to match him. So overall, I got the Heat winning this one. I think it's going to be a more competitive game than what we saw in Game 3. I don't think the Knicks are happy about that Game 3 performance just because you get blown out by almost 20 points. That's not a good look. And if the Heat blow out the Knicks in this Game 4, this series is getting wrapped up at 5. It's over. So overall, I got the Heat in this one, and I think that they'll go up 3-1 in this series.
Boys, don't go proving me wrong. I am no Knicks fan, but I cheer hard as shit for my New York teams. So I need y'all to step it up, man. Julius Randle need to get his shit together. Kyle and I have talked about this a number of times throughout these playoffs. For whatever reason, that man turned into a whole different person in the playoffs. Shot selection, mentality, turnovers. It's not a good look. Now, if the Knicks need to bench him like they did against Cleveland and sit him for the fourth quarter because they're not able to get anything of value from him, and again, value by points, rebounds, assists.
Production.
If you're not contributing, there you go. That's the word I was looking for. If you're not giving me production and you're not contributing, I don't need you on the floor. If you're going to be a liability, I don't need you on the floor. Tom Thibodeau can go and rely on somebody else. I don't know how to pronounce that backup center's name that has gotten a lot of Hartenstein. He's been given a lot of hustle plays. He's not blowing up the stat sheet, but diving for loose balls, tipping the rebounds up, making sure that his teammates are getting involved. Like, he's just very excitable. I'm not saying run him and Mitchell Robinson together because they're both offensive liabilities, but if he's going to get a little bit more burn because he's able to contribute in some way that Julius is not, I don't know. I'm not Tom Thibodeau. Again, I'm not going out there and I'm saying that's what needs to be done, but give Obi Toppin the burn. Give it to somebody else that wants it. So New York, do what you need to do. Tie this series up so it's entertaining. If y'all get blown out again, I'm right there with Kyle. This is a wrap. Don't even show up to the Garden because you know Madison Square Garden is not going to tolerate anything more than forcing this to go 7. So I'm a pivot.
Hold on. Kev, can you do me a favor?
What's up?
Can you show the facial reaction when I mentioned if the Heat blow out the Knicks in Game 4? Can you just give that quick reaction? Because I saw.
I said I was like, man, it's a wrap. What?
Yeah,
it's over.
Yeah.
Like, if you get smacked up in Miami, back-to-back games, you're going back to the Garden with your tail between your legs and your head down. There's no shot the Knicks have any chance. If this is a blowout, I'm not saying if it's a close. If it ends up being like you lose a buzzer beater or you lose in a close, narrow fist fight, like it's just very, very tight the way, that's different. You get smacked up in back-to-back games. Do you know what that does to your mental? Like, the Knicks are not ready for that kind of trip back to the Garden where if you start to fall early in that next game at the Garden, you will get booed off the floor like immediately. So
and I have to ask you, is there a possibility that can happen?
No, I don't think Tibbs is going to let that happen. I don't think they're going to chuck up as many threes. I don't think that I don't think their shot selection is going to be as aggressive as it was in this game, or should I say questionable. If you are missing as bad as you are early on, you have to go and attack the paint. You have to understand the assignment here. Go get Julius in foul trouble, get Mitchell Robinson in foul trouble, and just find ways to penetrate. The deeper you go on that bench, the better you will see it's going to work out for you. So I will pivot from that series because I cannot just. I don't know how Knicks fans do this
right now. New York's
I don't know how Knicks fans do this on a regular basis. At least I know Dallas sucks. The Knicks have spurts in games where it's like those 3 juggernaut players in Barrett, Brunson, and Randall can go off for 70+ points. And then there's games like this where it's just like Julius can't do shit and RJ and Jalen are forced to carry a dying team. So we'll see what happens. This next one, though, because of how Game 3 ended.
You want to talk about that for a second?
30-point blowout in Staples Center. I'm calling it Staples. I don't give a shit what it's actually called. The Lakers go out and absolutely obliterate the Warriors. So before we go into predictions of Game 4, quick thoughts. Don't even change the camera panel. I got to see your face. What the hell did you think happened in that Game 3?
Oh, we were lit. We were cooking, dude. We were on fire.
We were lit.
Dude, it was... AD did his
thing. There's a party in my city, yeah.
Yeah, this ain't Memphis, though.
I couldn't do it.
Memphis is in Cancun right now. They got better things to do with their time.
Dylan Brooks is unemployed. That's the best part.
No, he's getting those applications ready for China, dude. He's ready to go to the Guangdong Warriors or something like that. I don't know where the hell he's gonna end up, but it's got he's got China basketball written all over his future. So we won't even talk about Dylan Brooks. Wasting my time as far as I'm concerned. But no, when it came to the Lakers in Game 3, dude, they showed up. And once again, this has been just a consistent theme for the Warriors the entire year. They suck on the road. They get blown out by 30 points on the road. And, the Lakers made a point of emphasis to attack the paint and get to the free throw line. They got Draymond in early foul trouble. And honestly, Kev, I know you've been talking about him a couple times, even
Yeah.
before the playoffs started. D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell playing some big time minutes, knocking down some big time shots, ice in his vein all day. I think I've even seen players on the bench where they'll do like this little thing, ice in the
Shit.
vein, like D'Angelo always does. Braun had a decent game. Just overall, it was just a well balanced effort from the Lakers. Honestly, if you're Darvin Ham, you're just over the moon about how well Game 3 played out. That was, literally probably a textbook outcome of how the playbook or how they wanted that game to go. And man, if you're Golden State, that's a tough one to look back on. You might have to burn the game tape after that one.
Yeesh.
But
I didn't even get to see the game. All I know is Kyle and I have been saying this over and over and over. This series, this playoff run, is dependent upon not LeBron James, not the bench, Anthony Davis.
Mhm.
When he's on, there ain't no missing. He's on one. He only had 25, but they also didn't have to play that fourth quarter. So when you really think about it, the man easily could have gone for 35 plus, but he goes for 25 and 13 as opposed to the game before where he only had 11.
Mhm.
Games where he pops off, it's truly and honestly a tale of two halves. It's literally a switch. They turn it on one game, they turn it off. That is how the Lakers are going to win this series. So my thoughts on this are just quick. They fed Anthony Davis. They got Draymond in foul trouble. They won the game. It's an easy formula. You get in Draymond's head, get him out there, get him to be a little extra physical, arguing with the refs. You may get a tech or two. Maybe you get lucky, get an ejection out of it because of two techs. But when he's thrown off, he talked about it in the press conference after game 1 that they lost against the Lakers. He needed to play better because when he is off the floor, Steve Kerr's got to pull somebody else off the bench. That throws off rotations, that throws off minutes, that throws off defensive schemes, offensive schemes, because we all know that Draymond is the anchor to the Warriors team as a whole. And if you don't know that already, clearly you're not watching the same games that we are. So this game was crazy, but Golden State blew them out in the game prior. So it's like it's back and forth now. It's a matter of who's going to find a way to take game 4. And that's exactly what we're going to get to. So, Kyle, this is your team. This is your squad. Do you believe that game 3 is going to be enough to catapult you guys to win game 4?
I mean, when it comes to the Lakers from a Game 3 perspective, I don't think you could have asked for a better outcome. You win by 30 points, and you're able to not only rest LeBron James, but Anthony Davis as well for that essentially what was the entire fourth quarter. You're saving those guys some extra minutes just because of how well you effectively played in the first 3 quarters. And, looking back at that Game 3 performance, one of the biggest adjustments that I think the Lakers made defensively was putting AD a little bit higher up on their side of the defensive court. What I mean by that is that in the first quarter of that Game 3, AD was mostly hanging around the rim. And then Golden State was hitting some shots. Steph and Clay were hitting shots. It just seemed overall that Golden State, I would say for about a quarter and a half, from the first quarter to about halfway through the second quarter, Golden State looked really good. At one point, they were up 11 points. I believe the score at one point was 40-29 in favor of Golden State. And then the Lakers made that adjustment by putting Anthony Davis a little bit higher up defensively. They basically put him around the free throw line, and he would shuffle from one point to the other on the free throw line. And it disrupted Golden State's effectiveness in running their pick and roll with Draymond Green to get some open space for Steph and Clay. And honestly, once the Lakers made that defensive adjustment, Golden State really couldn't get into any sort of consistent rhythm offensively. Steph was relatively ineffective, even though that he scored over 20 points. it just wasn't a game where Steph was really comfortable. You could say the same for Clay. Jordan Poole, who had some pretty good performances earlier on in the series, he had 5 points. You're going to have to get better contributions if you're looking at this from the Warriors perspective with Jordan Poole if you're scoring 5 points. That's just not going to cut it. So overall, when it comes to the Lakers, I think if the Lakers are able to keep this defensive intensity up and essentially stifle what Golden State runs offensively, I think it's going to serve them wonders in game 4. And also, when you're looking at Golden State, I don't want to dogpile here, but Golden State has just not been a good team on the road this year. I know that they won some critical games in Sacramento in this previous series or in that previous first round series. But you're going up against a Lakers team that has been here before. And I understand that Golden State has been running a dynasty for basically 10 years. But the Lakers have some pretty good players to run with right now. And honestly, the Lakers have looked like the better team so far. And the Lakers know that the Golden State sucks on the road this year. And I think the Lakers, if they're smart, they make the adjustment in not allowing Golden State to get off to a fast start and be able to run their offense effectively throughout the entire game. I think if they're able to even replicate half of the defensive success that they had in game 3 and they bring that effort into game 4, I think they'll go up 3-1 in the series. When it comes to Golden State, you got to get your guys into rhythm. You got to get Steph some open looks. You got to get Clay some open looks as well. And honestly, their role players have to step up. You know, Andrew Wiggins has been pretty good throughout this playoff run so far, but you're gonna have to get probably 20 points from him. You're gonna have to get a similar type of performance from Jordan Poole, and you better hope that guys like Gary Payton II or Dante DiVincenzo step up and make some critical plays. I know Kevon Looney's gonna do his thing. He's gonna eat rebounds and get some easy baskets around the rim. So overall, from Golden State, they have to be able to ramp up the defensive intensity against the Lakers, which they haven't been able to do. And if you're the Lakers, just keep running towards the basket. The Lakers have been killing the Warriors and getting to the free throw line this series. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I think they're going to get Draymond into early foul trouble. If they do that effectively, the Lakers should win this, not in the same fashion that they did in game 3. I think this will be a more competitive game. But I still see a very viable path for the Lakers to win game 4 and to go up 3-1 in the series. I still see a scenario where Golden State could tie the series 2 games apiece when we go back to game 5 back in San Francisco. But I think more times than not, I see the Lakers winning this game 4. And it's simply because I think the Lakers are going to make that effort to get to the free throw line, which Golden State has not made that adjustment to in any way whatsoever. I think AD is going to be that primary factor in the reason why the Lakers win this game, because he's been great on the offensive side. He's been great defensively. And overall, he's been knocking down his free throws. And on top of that, I just think the Lakers have figured out how to effectively defend against the Warriors by limiting Draymond Green, who is essentially the cog that allows Steph and Clay to get jump started. I think if the Lakers hit on all those 3 points, I think they win this game. It's as simple as that.
I'm in full agreement, man. I want, obviously, Golden State to tie this series because, again, I just want long basketball. I know you and my brother and my dad do not, because everybody I just mentioned is a Laker fan. So what I'm going to say here is I think that, well, I know that the Lakers have figured out the successful formula. Kyle already alluded to it. Draymond's foul status and how he's going to be effective in the game, and then Anthony Davis on whether or not he decides to show up. If AD continues to be aggressive, is fed early, I think this game is going to get away from Golden State early. Kyle already said, a big discrepancy, a big eye-opening statistic in this series is the amount of free throws that each team has taken respectfully. I don't have the numbers. I had a stat that I had sent to Kyle via Twitter or something like that, to the point where the discrepancy was something along the lines of, I think the Lakers had taken 60 some odd free throws as opposed to Golden State's 30 or maybe even 80 free throws for LA. The point is it's more than double. And Kyle makes a good point. LA's attacking the basket. LA is trying to get to the free throw line as opposed to Golden State being a very jump shot heavy team. There's not a lot of penetration to the point where you're going to create that friction, that opportunity to get fouled and get to the free throw line for those free baskets. it's pretty blatantly obvious that we all know the Golden State is a jump shooting team. We all know that they are the greatest juggernaut, arguably greatest 3-point shooting barrage of a unit that we've ever seen in NBA history. But when you start to, as I say with Luka all the time, when you start to see those shots are not falling, you have guys that are capable of getting to the rim. You have guys that are capable of penetrating. We're talking about one of the best handles in the league in Steph Curry. We're talking about a guy that can pump fake and get you off your feet in Klay Thompson that we've all seen can still hit mid-range jump shots and finish at the rim. Draymond Green with the pick and roll, the way he's able to keep the ball, roll with it, finish at the rim, if not get to the free throw line. You have athletic wings like Andrew Wiggins who can drive and finish at the rim, Jonathan Kuminga when given the right minutes, and so on and so forth. What I'm getting at is you guys have to comprehend if it ain't falling, there are other ways to score. And the saying always goes, you live and you die by the three. This is the playoffs. You cannot afford to die on a horse that ain't moving anymore. If the threes ain't falling, go find a way to get buckets a different way. I understand that Golden State wins these championships this way. I understand that they have won multiple playoff games this way. But when you talk about the Lakers having an answer, not only just a regular answer, but oh god, there's a mosquito on my microphone. That was kind of scary and gross at the same time, but thankfully I got it. That scared the shit out of me. I don't do bugs, guys, so I saw something crawling and I was able to kill it. But yeah, so what I was saying was the fact that the Lakers have an answer and the fact that the Lakers have an obvious like statement, a warrior stopper to an extent, and it's AD. They don't have anybody to guard him. He's too athletic. He's too fast. He's too long. He can shoot from outside. He can finish at the rim, and he plays in tremendous defense. When Golden State goes small, AD's way bigger than Draymond, gets him into foul trouble. You go Looney, you can take Looney off the dribble, finish at the rim, if not pull up on a jump shot, because Looney's not going to go out there and guard you at the three-point line. And if he does, AD's a lot faster. So that's going to be a complete mismatch because we all know AD has guard-type handles because he played the guard position until he got to college. All I'm saying is the Lakers have the opportunity to strike while the iron is hot, take this next one while they're home, and have Golden State cry on the way back to Golden State. Because let's be honest, I was actually talking about this with one of my boys on Twitter. My boy Danny, shout out to Danny. The Warriors Chase Arena, the Chase Center. I even talked about it with Michael Casado, who's on this show. Shout out to Mike, the Warriors fan. That arena is very quiet. It's not like Oracle. It doesn't get rocking. It doesn't get loud. It doesn't get entertaining. Golden State starts to go down by 5, 6, 7 points. The arena's dead silent. People are leaving the arena. Like it's not good. And we all know that when you move to San Francisco, that the cost of living is ridiculous. But the cost of these ticket prices have gone up, which has obviously taken the opportunity for loyal Warriors fans to be able to attend. So I don't know if that also has an effect on their mental when they're home and all these different things. But if this goes back to Chase, don't be surprised if it gets out of hand early and the Lakers are up 3-1 in the series. That arena might actually empty out before halftime, if not like right after halftime, because I need you guys to pay attention to it. People think I'm kidding. It is a drastic difference. Even when Golden State hit shots, if you were watching basketball, even if you're not a Warriors fan, Oracle Arena was unmatched. Like you did not want to go back to Oracle ever. The Chase Center is like less than half of what Oracle was. So I just thought I'd put that out there for people to pay attention to notice. But I got the Lakers taking game 4, and I think that this is going to head back to Golden State 3-1 in favor of the Lakers.
Kev, you do know that Game 4 is in LA, right?
Yeah, no, I said going back to Golden State. Like,
oh, okay.
Like if this ends 3-1 in favor of the Lakers,
okay,
at Staples, again, I'm not changing it. I don't care. It's crypto, whatever. Crypto.com arena.
Yeah,
kiss
whatever.
my ass. They're going to go back to Golden State. They're going to be pretty pissed off. Now, I'm not saying it's over because Golden State themselves have been a part of a 3-1 deficit, and it's going to be the same guy doing it on a different team if that's the case, but we'll see what happens. Right now, I got the Lakers winning game 4.
Yeah. And Kev, we picked the Lakers to win the series. I think we said I think I said 6.
I think I said 7.
Yeah, and to me, it's just going to come down to whether or not the Golden State could be able to really get over these road game woes.
It's
You know,
crazy.
I don't
Different
think
team.
I don't think they're going to be as bad in Game 3, but is it going to be enough to get over the hump? You know, I will say
We'll see.
Golden State has been able to rise to the occasion when their back was up
Multiple
against the
times.
wall, and they can definitely do that here. But it definitely seems like the Lakers have their number so far, and like I said, I think the Lakers have figured out that if you get Draymond into early foul trouble, it disrupts Golden State's entire offensive flow, just because he's not able to create those pick and rolls as effectively. Because you never know. I mean, if one of those guys rolls off the screen wrong, Draymond may get called for an offensive foul. And if you look back at that last game, Draymond had 5 fouls halfway through the third quarter. And then at that point, the Lakers went on a run and they never looked back. So
Yep.
there's a lot of pressure on Golden State to get this game 4, because if they don't, I think this series is effectively a wrap. I don't think that Golden State will lose game 5. I think they'll be able to bounce back in game 5, but I think Golden State would probably lose game 6 back in LA. That's just kind of how I see this playing out.
Yeah. But that wraps up the NBA content. Again, as you guys know, with the playoffs, that's pretty much all we talk about. But we did have a UFC card that Kyle wants to discuss, UFC 288. So, Kyle, we had the card on Saturday. Let us know your thoughts about the fight. Who were we talking about today, first of all?
Oh, about the particular fight that I'm going to go over?
Yeah.
Oh, that was Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo. That was in the bantamweight division. So, honestly, that's the only fight I'm going to cover here, just because the Bilal Muhammad fight and the Gilbert Burns fight was a bit of a letdown, because Gilbert suffered a pretty apparent injury that affected him for the rest of the fight. He suffered that injury in the first round, and that was actually a 5-round co-main event. So the fact that he was able to last the entire 25 minutes, I'll give him credit on that, but the fight was a snooze fest just because he was injured. But no, I just want to focus on the Henry Cejudo and Aljamain Sterling fight. So looking back at this fight, Aljamain Sterling is able to defend his bantamweight belt against Henry Cejudo. This was Henry Cejudo's first fight in 3 years since he made the announcement that he was going to retire a few years back. Comes back against Aljamain. And to be quite honest with you guys, I thought that Cejudo fought pretty well throughout this fight. Obviously, lost this fight in a split decision, but this wasn't a scenario where I thought Aljamain blew out Henry like 4 rounds to 1 or 5 rounds to none. This was a very competitive fight from beginning to end. And even though that Aljamain got the decision in this fight to be able to defend his belt, really, I thought Henry fought a pretty good fight, but I just believe that the difference in this fight was Aljamain was able to get some pretty good calf kicks that were able to effectively throw off Henry's timing, lost his balance a few times. And I have to say, I thought Aljamain's takedown defense was pretty special in this fight. So he was able to defend against Cejudo pretty well in that regard. And that's why he's still holding on to that bantamweight belt. There's one point that I have to make this abundantly clear on, and it comes to these judges. Now, in my personal opinion, Aljamain won this fight. Granted, it was a close fight, and I do believe that Aljamain won 3 out of the 5 rounds. But one of these cards, or one of these scorecards in particular, was just horrendous. I don't remember who specifically scored this fight. There was one in particular. I think it was Derek Clearly. I believe that was the guy. I'm actually going to pull it up just so that I have the reference here. I'm going to go with him. I think it was him that made this. He made this specific score. Gives the 5th round to Henry Cejudo. I mean, to Aljamain Sterling. This was utterly ridiculous as far as I see it. This was the one round that I would have given Cejudo. I think Cejudo won rounds 3 and 5. It was one judge in particular that also gave Henry round 2. I believe Derek also gave round 2 to Henry as well, but gave round 5 to Henry, which was ridiculous. Excuse me, he gave it to Aljamain. Henry definitely won that 5th round. There's no doubt about it. But the fact that in this case, this judge actually gave Aljamain that round was horrendous. Because had he actually properly assessed that 5th round, that would have been a 10-9 round for Cejudo. And then technically, Henry Cejudo would have won that fight overall just based off of the scorecards. So when it comes to this judge in particular, I don't know what to say. You know, it's one thing to, miss a round that clear, but the fact that it was in the fifth round, the final round of the fight, and you give a round to Aljamain where he got classed pretty well in that fifth round, where Henry was able to secure a takedown against Aljamain, was able to land some good shots, was bringing forward pressure. I just don't know how you can miss a round that badly. And, fortunately, overall, the judges did get the fight right with the decision, because I do believe that Aljamain definitely deserved the fight. It's just, had that one ref actually made the proper score in favor of Henry in that fifth round, we would have had a real controversy on our hands, because there were probably some people that believed that Henry won that fight. I'm not in that camp. I think that Aljamain won by a hair in this one. It's just, I just don't know how you can inaccurately score that fifth round for Aljamain when it was clear as day that Henry won that fifth. But overall, I thought this was a very compelling fight. It actually lived up to the expectations that I had going into it. It's just the biggest thing moving forward is, who Aljamain is going to face next. That is going to be Sean O'Malley. And then we'll see whether or not that Henry decides to hang it up, or if he decides to fight Max Holloway at 145. That seems to be where a lot of the chatter is being spent right now, that Henry would go to 145 to fight Max Holloway. That would be a very interesting fight. I'd love to see that happen, but time will tell on that. But overall, I thought UFC 288 this past weekend was pretty solid. It's just this one scorecard in particular, I just don't know how you could look at that fifth round and give a 10-9 to Aljamain when it was clear as day that Henry Cejudo won that round. But overall, the judges did get the actual decision right, but this one score in particular was just horrendous based off of what we saw in that fifth. But overall, it was a good UFC card, and if you guys got a chance to watch it, I hope that you guys enjoyed it.
So, guys, it's a tad late on this end. It's about 1 in the morning. We're going to call it here. We had a lot to talk about today. Obviously, just happy to get back in the booth. And, we'll be back again later in the week. Thankfully, as we looked ahead, there are thankfully 2 games almost every single day this week, pending on how these series go.
Mm-hmm.
And if they actually need all these extra games. But we'll have plenty of content going on for you guys. And as of right now, that's everything I have. So, Kyle, if you want to wrap us up, that'll be it.
No, just once again, thank you guys for tuning in, whether that was watching us on YouTube or listening on the audio platforms. We definitely appreciate the support. Like Kev said, we got plenty of NBA content to go over this week, so it'll be rolling out throughout the next couple of days. And then we will be back later this week. I know we said that last week, and there were some things that popped up that forced us to not be here, but we will be back later this week with another episode. More than likely, we'll be breaching the end stages of these second round matchups in the NBA playoffs. So we'll kind of cover it from there and just move on from that point. But with that said, you guys, once again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys later this week.